So if there's other thoughts you have on that, or what would you say is impactful about this when it comes to like our authenticity? I mean, I think of really authentic healing, especially as we're talking about like holistic healing. But any thoughts come to mind for you?
Well, I'd love for you to expand on authentic healing, because I think that's probably an important concept.
Yeah. So I think like, and there's maybe a lot of different ways that we can take this, but the biggest thing I think of is not just placing like a Band-Aid over something. And I think that a lot of things that really most of us engage in, even if it's like therapeutic things, even like self-care type activities, sometimes I'll put like our coping skills in this category, which sounds strange from a therapist, because it's like, aren't y'all all about coping skills? And I'm like, yes and no. Like I am when I need to help people figure out like how can you cope with some of these feelings that come up on your own. But coping is not like the healing, right? Because coping skills such as like even if it's like the journaling or sometimes maybe like the meditation and stuff too, like it's going to help you in that brief moment and some long-term impacts. But if we're not getting to the root of like what's creating all this like disruption for you, it's going to still come back. And so I feel like the coping skills, some of these therapeutic activities that we engage in, at short term, we're just placing a Band-Aid over it and then hoping that like, hopefully it heals underneath the Band-Aid. Where like literally that's not how cuts or scrapes work. Like we can't just put a Band-Aid over it and it's not like healing itself. We usually have to like wash it off, cleanse it a little bit.
Sometimes it burns.
Yeah, and it does. And maybe each day you try something. Let me put some Neosporin on it today. Let me put this ointment today. But that's like more of this holistic approach of like not just relying on the Band-Aid for the healing. So that's what comes to mind to me when I think about like actually authentic healing. And last thing, then I'll let you jump in. Also, like, it's hard to say what's wrong and right when it comes to healing. I don't like the Band-Aid approach, obviously. I like for people to get to the root of some things that's going on. But also everyone's healing journey is different, of course. But also healing looks different for everyone. So I think people having to be honest of like what's going to provide me the most benefit. What type of healing do I need? That's going to be authentic to them, right? Part of your healing is like the nature that's therapeutic for you, your long walks. I can engage in that to some extent, but if I'm not getting a long walk for the day, I'm okay, right? But that's not saying that your healing's not like authentic or vice versa. So I think people honoring like what healing actually means to them and what it looks like for them.
That's pretty much along the lines what I was kind of say is just being congruent with who you are, what's important to you, and what's actually like helpful to you, and helpful in the sense of not just making you feel better, but also is helping you to uncover and to be able to tolerate and adjust and manage and navigate difficult experiences and emotions, and maybe even get to the core of things to be able to feel like you're in a space of healing. And maybe that's a process that happens, over time, and maybe you're continuing to heal over time. But so I would say that when it comes to that, then it's a conversation or a question of what forms of healing really do help you, and what forms of healing really do get to the bottom or to the core of some issues that you may have, in the sense of actually healing and moving through the situation. I think therapy obviously is one form of healing that I think can be really helpful for many people. And I think there's also other forms of healing that can be really helpful for people. And generally speaking, often my advice tends to be, and it's different for everybody, but generally speaking, I would think that healing, like doing some sort of therapy at some portion of your life, if you're feeling things that are significantly distressing for you, and doing a host of other things in a holistic way, like you've been talking about, I think that often, is a part of that really leads to healing and sustained healing over time.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel too, like, one, just to be our true authentic self requires some level of vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And so even when we think of authentic healing, it's like putting ourselves in these places. And sometimes that even ties into like trying something new, right? You're like anxious about it, nervous. Am I going to do this thing right? It's some exposure of self, right? And sometimes that can be vulnerable. But I think putting ourselves in spaces where we're like allowed to be vulnerable with ourselves, there's some healing in that also. Like I said before, my experiences with the therapeutic things versus therapy, I think the therapy would be anxiety provoking for me because it's extremely vulnerable, right? Of like, look at me, I'm supposed to have everything together. I know all this stuff and I still got to walk into this office. And right, that's like, I'm exposing myself as vulnerable. A lot of these therapeutic things I engage in, like I said, there's no feelings attached to that. There's no vulnerable aspects of me that's needed. So if people can start to lean into like, what's vulnerable to them, what allows them to be their most vulnerable self, and maybe that's where they can find some healing also.
And I wonder, I don't know the answer necessarily, but I wonder if people can truly heal if they're not authentic, like really being authentic with themselves and also with their therapist or the forms of healing that are actually helpful and healthy.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's like that authentic part of self will have to emerge at some point for like the true healing, right? Or else maybe it still turns into that Band-Aid approach to healing, right? Where it's like there could still be maybe some work that's getting done. The depths of it.
Right, because the work may be more on the surface or closer to the surface, maybe just a little bit below, but like maybe there's actually more to go.
Yeah, definitely. Nice.
Thanks for tapping in to All Things Authentic. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. For full episodes, find All Things Authentic on your favorite podcast listening platform.